Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I got all the best cold CGC 9.8 comic books on the market right now that you can still buy for a really solid, fair price. Because there's a lot of YouTube channels out there, I think, doing the hot comic books and trending comic book videos, and they're pretty cool to sort of stay on top of. But in my experience, the hot comic books usually means high prices, because there's just, a lot of promotion, and then that increases the demand and the price, usually temporarily. So these videos here are just these ongoing cold list videos that we like to do, are just all about identifying some great CGC 9.8 key issues that you can still buy right now at a really solid, fair price. Okay, so a full list of 10 to get into today. Really loving how the list just rounded out today. I was pretty tempted, just doing some of the research here, kind of tempted to buy one or two of these in the CGC 9.8. So first one on the list is an XMen Adventures #1. Yeah, this one's a really cool one, especially in the 9.8, I think. A really kind of underfollowed early 90s book. So XMen Adventures #1 is a adaptation of the X-Men animated series. So X-Men animated series, so popular. Another thing you kind of get with this book is it's the first appearance of Morph. And I had mistakenly, on one of our videos there, I talked about the first appearance of Forge. And for some reason in my mind, I had like Forge was Morph, but that's not the case. And it got me interested in like, what's the first appearance of Morph, if there even is one, because I had known that, I thought he was only in the animated series. But there is a first appearance of Morph in print. It's X-Men Adventures #1, so that's pretty cool. In the 9.8, this one is a pretty cool collector item. There's a 29 CGC 9.8s out there in the blue label. So 1 of 29, first appearance of Morph, kind of if you're the biggest X-Men animated series fan. This is one to want, I think. 38.7% the 9.8 ratio, so not too bad for actually a sort of an underfollowed, not very well graded book. And an X-Men Adventures #1 in the CGC 9.8. I did see one sell on eBay for 145 bucks. A 1 of 29, 145 bucks. I think this one's kind of cool at the price point. I think, if you're the biggest X-Men fan, if you're a big X-Men animated series fan, this is kind of one to get. And a 1 of 29 in the 9.8 at 145 bucks. I think that's the last one that sold on eBay. I think that's a pretty fair price. Maybe if you wait in an auction, you get lucky, maybe closer to 100 on this one because it's so underfollowed. But if you want this one, right around 140, 150, we'll call it, I think is a really good price in the 9.8. So yeah, one to consider, I think, if you're an X-Men fan. X-Men Adventures #1 in the CGC 9.8. Yeah, it fits on a cold list too. Like, I really didn't even know too much about this one until a couple months ago, and then I ended up buying a raw. And my raw, yeah, I grabbed it in Canada. It was really cheap, so, but still maybe searching for one of those 9.8s. All right, next one on the list is a Superman Batman #8. So this is as far as I know, it's the first appearance of the new Supergirl, who's, it's Kara Zor-El. And so really cool cover on this one. It's like kind of a new girl in town. So, and I'll talk about the first print cover. That's kind of the easier one to find. And they're all about the same price, and since this one says like a new girl in town, I kind of prefer the first print since it's the first new Supergirl. This is a cool one that you can get for a pretty affordable price, and this one kind of caught my eye because my girlfriend and I, we occasionally watch the Supergirl show on Netflix, and I remember getting into it, and I didn't think it was going to be good at all, but I actually really enjoyed it. So we watch a couple episodes every now and then for sure, and she saw more of it than me, but that's what sort of made me notice this one, I think, in the CGC 9.8, and it's kind of a cool one, certainly if you're a big Supergirl fan. 621 CGC 9.8, so a lot of these out there, and I think when the Supergirl show first came out, it was well received, and a lot of people got these graded, and this is definitely one that suits a cold list because I think it was a lot higher price when Supergirl was kind of a hit show. So it's cooling off here, and there's 621 out there in the blue label, so you can find this one. 79.5% the CGC 9.8 ratio, so not that rare in the 9.8, and that kind of keeps the price low, which is nice. Completed listings and having a look at the Go Collect fair value and everything. Like, there's one on eBay right now. I think it's 82 bucks in the 9.8, looking pretty good. I think kind of 60 to 80, is kind of the fair price. So really, if you want this one, there's one on eBay right now at a pretty decent fair price. Maybe you get it closer to 60 if you're really patient in an auction. Yeah, I like the first print. There's also the sketch version of the first print, which is kind of cool. And I do kind of recommend just, the other prints are kind of cool too, but I do recommend just the first print because it does say a new girl in town on the cover, and, you know, to kind of coincide with her first appearance. So yeah, a really cool one, I think, that you can get under $100. This one really tempted me. That one on eBay right now that I just had told you about, I almost bought it like an hour ago, just doing some of the research for the video. So this is a cool one, cool cover, first new Supergirl. I think, you know, it's cold now, the price is right. You know, price is pulling back after it got really hot when the show first came out. So a cool one to consider. Next one of the better, I think, X-Men books to speculate on right now. It's an Astonishing X-Men number 6. This is a pretty cool modern one. It's the first Abigail brand, who she's like a special agent kind of thing. And this is basically also the first appearance of S.W.O.R.D. So S.W.O.R.D is sort of akin to S.H.I.E.L.D., so like a special agent type of agency within the superhero realm kind of thing. But S.H.I.E.L.D. is sort of Earth, you know, special agents, and S.W.O.R.D is space, you know, based sort of special agents that are kind of here to protect the Earth kind of thing. So yeah, I could imagine that if they wanted to make, you know, the new MCU a little bit different feeling than the last X-Men movies, you know, maybe you bring in S.W.O.R.D and they can maybe coincide with S.H.I.E.L.D. and talk with S.H.I.E.L.D. a little bit, because S.H.I.E.L.D. has been in all the Avengers movies and it's pretty well liked and, you know, well known. So I think, you know, and maybe they'll obviously have Abigail Brand in the new MCU movies possibly as well. So I'm really liking this one, actually. I think it's a kind of good one to maybe speculate on right now, but you can really still enjoy it. A great looking cover, a bunch of first appearances, 184 CGC 9.8s in the blue label, so not too many of them out there. And for the era, this is one of the better X-Men covers, you know, just kind of a cool classic cover with the Colossus, and I think it's Kitty Pryde. I'm not even sure who that is, but 75.7% the CGC 9.8 ratio. So more about the 1 of 184. I thought that's not very much for, like, you know, the potential of this book, and certainly that's a long shot that all that kind of stuff happens. But if they brought S.W.O.R.D into the new X-Men MCU movies, this book would be double, I can imagine, overnight, and probably trend up nicely from there. Because right now, completed listings in the 9.8, 169. There's one on eBay right now. I think it's like $210 or $220. Buy it now, so no best offer. Most of them kind of selling under 200, I think 175, you know, 169. Maybe in an auction you get lucky closer to 150, but this is a kind of wanted one. I think that S.W.O.R.D first appearance, Abigail Brand first appearance, that's got some potential, but one you can just enjoy as an X-Men fan of the era too, with this really cool cover. Yeah, Astonishing X-Men number 6 in the 9.8, definitely one to consider. And I think it's, you know, definitely on a cold list. You don't hear too many people, or fits on a cold list, don't hear too many people talking about that one. Next one's a really cool one. It's a Venom Vs Carnage number 1. Yeah, this is the first appearance of Patrick Mulligan, who eventually becomes Toxin, so kind of a new age symbiote there. And this is an early Clayton Crane cover and artwork, so that's kind of cool as well. Really, I like this cover. Issue number 2 is the first appearance of Toxin. So, you know, number 1, number 2, kind of take your pick, whatever you kind of like the best, maybe. We'll talk about number 1 here in the 9.8. There's 281 CGC 9.8s out there in the blue label. Not too bad. 65.5% is the CGC 9.8 ratio, so not extremely rare, which kind of keeps the price reasonable. This one is a really kind of wanted early Crane book, and then obviously you get the first appearance of Patrick Mulligan here. Completed listings about 150 to 175 in the CGC 9.8. This is a book I think went closer to 100 for quite a while, but yeah, now I think it's heating up just a little bit. Most of the completed listings I'm seeing between 150 and 175. Yeah, certainly there's a couple symbiote Venom movies coming out now, so maybe these other symbiotes might be worth speculating on. And this one around that 150 price, yeah, especially if you're a big Clayton Crane fan, this one kind of makes sense. Yeah, definitely worth considering, and you can get it at a good price right now. Yeah, Venom Vs Carnage, number 1 in the CGC 9.8. All right, next one here is a Spawn number 141. with the classic first appearance of She-Spawn and the She-Spawn cover by Greg Capullo as well. Great Capullo cover of the era. This one's cool. I think, if a Spawn movie comes out, there's certainly a possibility that a She-Spawn kind of shows up with, so many studios kind of going with ladies, female superheroes for sure. And this one is a really cool collector item, I think, in the CGC 9.8. You don't hear too many people talking about this one. There's only 35 9.8s in the blue label out there. That's not too bad at all. I think if She-Spawn did show up in a movie, or there was any rumors that she was going to be in the next Spawn movie, whenever that comes out, this book would, I think, be a lot more than it is now. And it's a 1 of 35 collector item. So, yeah, really cool collector item, I think. 54.7%, the 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 54.7% of them are CGC 9.8. So that's not too bad either, not too rare at all. This one though, with the 1 of 35, the prices are kind of getting up there. I think if you want this one, it's a really good deal is under 200, but most of the completed listings between 200 and 225 I'm seeing for Spawn number 141. This definitely is one Spawn fans, you don't hear too many of them kind of sharing it, and maybe there's some potential there with the first She-Spawn appearance in this one. Yeah, so Spawn number 141 is definitely a cold one worth considering. Next one is an interesting one from one of my favorite eras of comics, like ever. One of my favorite runs. Batman 386 we'll talk about here. It's the first appearance of Black Mask. Yeah, this is a really interesting book for me. I don't have one of these in the CGC 9.8, it being a great Batman book from one of my favorite eras. I'm just not sold on the cover, and never was. Like, I just, I saw the cover, it never was that appealing to me. I always sort of knew this was the first appearance of Black Mask, like a pretty big villain, but never really liked the cover, and it sort of, I do kind of want this one, but I think me not liking the cover, I was never compelled to get out there and buy it in the CGC 9.8. But right now, it is one to consider for a really good price. That's like a great 9.8, I think. So there's 283 CGC 9.8s out there for like the first appearance of a big Batman villain. That's got a lot of potential, I think. Like, that's great. It looks pretty great on the census. 26.1%, the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 26.1% of them are CGC 9.8s. And like for an 80s Batman book, like for most 80s books, that doesn't seem that good, but for 80s Batman, that's not too bad. Yeah, decent rarity, not too many of them for a first Batman villain, and on the census. And pricing I'm seeing, I saw one sell for $325. So yeah, this is one, like even back, my experience here, this one hasn't moved up in price that much. I think occasionally I would have saw some of these go for around 400. You don't see too many of them. Yeah, not too many pop up in the 9.8, and I think sometimes with like perfect centering in the 9.8, they'll sell for around 400. But I think right now most of them selling for about 325. I think a nice one selling for about 325. So yeah, this one hasn't picked up in price as much, and yeah, the Black Mask I don't think hit that well with some of the movies and shows that he's been in so far. So yeah, this is a really cool one, but it'll, is there some potential moving forward? Maybe if they go with the Black Mask in some of these movies, but I don't think he's in the Batman coming out. I don't believe so. So, but because he's not, it's kind of a cold one that you can get at a fair price, and right near 300. This is a pretty great CGC 9.8 from the sort of low print Batman run of the 80s there, where Batman comics, yeah, they're pretty hard to come by in the super high grade during this era. So yeah, definitely one to consider if you're a Batman fan. Okay, next one here, an Uncanny X-Men number 166. This is the first appearance of Lockheed. This one, a really cool cover too, and it's kind of a double-sized issue. So these double-sized issues tend to be really hard to find in the 9.8. Like, they get dinged up a little bit easier, these mega-sized issues kind of thing. Uncanny X-Men 166 is kind of a cool one. First, Lockheed. One thing to mention is Lockheed is a part of S.W.O.R.D. So I mentioned that Astonishing X-Men number 6. So these are kind of two books that you can maybe speculate on the MCU, maybe bringing in some new X-Men mutants, and maybe Lockheed and Abigail Brand are part of S.W.O.R.D. in the new MCU X-Men movies. So Yeah, and plus with this one, really cool cover, pretty affordable too. There's a 248 CGC 9.8s in the blue label, 44.3% the CGC 9.8 ratio. So not anything to write home about the rarity, with that 9.8 ratio being about 44.3% or 44% for an 80s book. But price is pretty reasonable, yeah, for this one, and I do think there's some potential there that you know, maybe Lockheed does find Lockheed could be in a new MCU movie. 164 and 181 were some of the 2 completed listings in this one just in the last couple weeks had sold in the CGC 9.8. So at that price point, I think this one and that Astonishing X-Men #6 are pretty cool X-Men books to speculate on that still haven't like really increased in price in the 9.8, whereas like the obvious one is kind of Uncanny X-Men 266. Like if they bring Gambit back, it's going to be cool, and even the Jubilee first appearance. But these 2 are definitely ones to consider. Yeah, Uncanny X-Men 166 with the first appearance of Lockheed, CGC 9.8, I think is a pretty good X-Men one to consider right now. So next book here is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #59. So this one is super underfollowed, I think, but you know, a really cool collector item, I think, if you're a Jennika fan and kind of following the new Ninja Turtles, comics and saga. #59, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #59 is the first cover appearance of Jennika. So yeah, this right now is, I think, a pretty, you know, a really affordable comic book. In the 9.8, there's just not very many of them. This, you know, not a lot of people are focusing on this one yet. They're still just, I think, you know, trying to get a 51 and get all their 51s graded, which is the first appearance of Jennika. But 59, her first cover appearance, might be kind of a good one to get ahead here and maybe grab some raws and maybe get some graded if you're into that. There's 4 CGC 9.8s in the blue label for this one, so really under the radar. But it is the first Jennika cover, and I think could be, you know, pretty well collected over time. 80% the 9.8 ratio. I think 5 of them were graded, so 4 of them are 9.8. I think for this one, if it popped up in the 9.8, even though there's only 4, I think like $60 to $80, because really nobody's really focusing on this one. I just really like the cover, and I personally have thought of grabbing this one in the raw. I really almost pulled the trigger once in the raw. Just to sort of round out my Jennika collection, I guess. But if you're a fan, I think this one's one to consider, even in the 9.8. If one popped up kind of in Canada between 60 and 80 bucks, I would be kind of tempted on this one to get maybe one of those 4. So hopefully more come on being graded. But a cool Jennika cover, and one to consider that you can get for like a really cheap price. Even in the raw, like much cheaper. Like I would aim for kind of, you know, maybe 10 bucks in the raw. I think you can get this one for a really good price right now. Okay, next one here is an interesting one. You know, maybe it doesn't fit on a cold list. We'll get into it here. It's a Batman #405. So Batman 404 is kind of year 1, part 1, and part 2 being 405. In part 2, you get the first appearance of Carmine Falcone. So he's a really big mob boss in Gotham, and a big part of the year 1 storyline. So the reason why I say this book possibly might not fit on a cold list is I think Carmine Falcone is like going to be in the Batman movie coming out next year. So this one, I've heard like some whispers of people grabbing this one in the 9.8, but I do still think, you know, in some lulls here, because we had that trailer, and you know there hasn't been a trailer for the Batman in about a couple months here. So I think we're in a bit of a lull for some of the Batman books, and this one you can still get for a decent price. And in the 9.8, there's 264 in the blue label out there, so a 1 of 264, not too bad. 31.4% the CGC 9.8 ratio, so kind of a late 80s book. That's mid to late 80s, not too bad, especially for a Batman book. It's not bad. But this one's still affordable. So I saw one on eBay sell for $125. You know, I've heard of people kind of grabbing this one a little bit closer to 100 as well, so maybe like 110, 105. I think that's a decent buy. You know, if you're a Batman fan, it's a cool cover, it's a cool book of the era, and you know, I occasionally watch the Gotham show, and Carmine Falcone is in the Gotham show, and I think this book did kind of heat up quite a bit when that Gotham show first hit with the Falcone character. I think that's why there's probably 264 9.8s. Like, that kind of seems like a lot for a pretty obscure first appearance. But a lot of people just collect the whole year one set, so that could explain that. But yeah, maybe some potential with Carmine, Falcone, and a good Batman book to pick up on a budget. Because, yeah, year one part one is about 200 or over now in the 9.8. Kind of 200, 225. So this one closer to 100, Batman 405. First Carmine, Falcone. A cold one to consider. Okay, last one on the list here. A really investment grade book, I think. And I brought out one of my books from the era, but this one probably a better 9.8, and it is more expensive than the 9.8. I think it certainly is a better 9.8 than this is Uncanny X-Men 112. But I want to talk about here Uncanny X-Men 114. Yeah, I really like this cover, first off. Cool black cover that's really rare and tough in the 9.8. But the first thing you get on this is the first time it says Uncanny in the X-Men title ever. And, you know, growing up, I just really liked the Uncanny X-Men books, and I just loved the colors, and I, you know, always tried to pick them up when I could, although back then they were pretty expensive, you know, to a kid, but... Uncanny X-Men, though, 114 is, I think, one to kind of focus on from this era that gets overlooked quite often. Because in the CGC 9.8, there are 78 9.8s out there. So not a lot of these out there. A 1 of 78, which is anytime you get something really cool and there's less than 100 of them, that's pretty cool. I really like that from a sort of collector perspective. 9.8 ratio on this one, though. It is a 1978 book, so we're getting older here, but 8.1% of all graded copies are CGC 9.8. That's nice and low and nice and rare. Yeah, you like to see that. That's even when you sort of relatively look at all the other X-Men books around of this era. This is one of the class-leading rarities with a low 9.8 ratio. There's like one or two other 9.8s that are a little more rare. But this one really stands out. Tough black cover, I think. Yep, the black covers, sometimes they really show those spine dinks. So this is one I saw completed listings here in September. So it was over a month ago now, but about a month ago, I would say. For $849. That, I think, is actually a pretty great buy. This one in a new case, perfectly centered too. Newsstand edition. It was, I mean, at that price, sort of $800 to $850, I think this is pretty much a buy at that price. A really rare one from the era. I think a lot of people are pretty nostalgic about the Uncanny, like kind of like me. Just, you know, certainly you grew up in kind of the 80s and 90s, the Uncanny X-Men. It was just gold for me. I just loved Uncanny X-Men growing up. So to get the one with the first Uncanny on the cover, and it's a really rare 9.8, and like right now, I think you can get it at a great price. Like there's, you know, no reason for it to kind of be heated up in price. This is one I've actually kept an eye on too for the last 2 to 3 years in the 9.8. It like $849. That's a really good price, I think. I think I've saw this one sell for over $1,000 before. Especially this one, $849, being it was a nice new case, really nice center with the colors looking spectacular. Like if I would have saw that one, it would have really tempted me if there was kind of some cheap shipping to Canada for it, but this is a more expensive one, but definitely an investment grade X-Men book of this era that's often overlooked, so kind of fits on a cold list as well. Uncanny X-Men 114 in the CGC 9.8, the first Uncanny on a book. So yeah, just a classic book, and that's really rare in the 9.8, so worth checking out. Okay, that's all 10 of them here. Yeah, the 10 of the coldest CGC 9.8 comic books on the market right now that you can get still at a fair price. So I'll put the full list in the description below of the books if you just want a quick resource. But this was a really solid list. Like, you know, doing the research for the video this morning and last night, like really tempted on a couple of these in the 9.8, as I mentioned kind of throughout the video. So yeah, I think a lot of solid ideas for everyone, and yeah, I'd really like to get out some of these books that you can buy at a fair price, because I think a lot of these YouTube channels, they do all the hot trending comic book videos almost not really knowing that they're promoting those books a lot and having a lot of people basically overpay for them, and then a month or two later those books aren't cold and then the prices drop. So in general, right, like there's going to be some exceptions, but so I just like to come at it from that completely different angle and talk about, well, like what are some great books that are just selling for normal prices, that haven't like spiked in price or that aren't hot, right? I think it's a great exercise to do. And yeah, There's a couple on here, like the first new Supergirl, that Astonishing X-Men number 6. Love that cover. First S.W.O.R.D. I think that's one of the better ones, especially under 200 if you could swing that one. Astonishing X-Men number 6. Okay, we'll wrap it up there though. If you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Love to have you on our comic book collecting and comic book investing team. Hit the bell for all the latest video notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter as well. Alright, that'll be it for this video though. Yeah, I got a lot of ideas. I'll probably head on eBay here and see if I can find some deals in these, to be honest, in a second. But really happy I could share it with everyone. Thanks so much for the support, and message me on Instagram if you had any questions. Yeah, just loving all the conversations I'm having on Instagram with the team. People buying 9.8s actively, so always fun to talk. Alright, thanks again, and I will see you on the next one.